I used to believe that some people were permanent, unchanging, unbreakable fixtures in your life. For me, that person was my best friend. If someone had asked me who knew me better than anyone else in the world, I wouldn't have hesitated to say their name. We grew up together, shared secrets whispered under blankets, laughed through heartbreaks, and promised that no matter what happened, we'd always have each other's backs. I trusted my best friend without thinking twice. That trust was automatic, like breathing. I never questioned motives, never read between the lines, never wondered if there were things being hidden from me. Why would I? This was the person who held my hand through my worst days and celebrated my smallest victories like they were their own. We had routines that felt sacred, morning messages, late-night calls, random check-ins that didn't need a reason. Even when life got busy, even when we didn't talk for days, I never felt worried. I believed that real friendships didn't need constant reassurance. They just existed. Looking back now, I realize how blind certainty can be. There were small things I ignored, moments that didn't sit right but were easy to dismiss, a hesitation before answering certain questions, a change in tone when certain names came up, the way my best friend would sometimes go quiet when I talked about my dreams, then quickly change the subject. I told myself I was overthinking. I always did. After all, everyone changes, right? I remember one evening clearly. We were sitting across from each other, coffee growing cold between us, talking about life the way we always had. I was mid-sentence, sharing something personal, something I hadn't told anyone else, when I noticed my best friend wasn't really listening. Their eyes kept drifting to their phone, fingers tapping the screen nervously. "Everything okay?" I asked, half joking. They smiled too quickly. "Yeah, just tired." I accepted that answer without question. I always did. What I didn't know then was that while I was opening my heart, they were carrying something heavy, something that involved me, something that would eventually tear through everything I thought we were. There was a truth sitting between us at that table, invisible to me, loud in its silence. That night, when we hugged goodbye, I felt the same comfort I always had, the familiarity, the safety. I went home believing nothing had changed. But something had changed. I just wasn't meant to know it yet. And that's the cruel thing about betrayal. It doesn't announce itself. It smiles at you. It listens to your secrets. It pretends to be loyal until the moment it no longer needs to. The first real crack didn't come with drama or raised voices. It came quietly, disguised as confusion. It started with people acting differently around me. Friends who used to greet me warmly now offered polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Conversations would stop when I entered a room, then restart awkwardly a few seconds later, as if nothing strange had happened. At first, I brushed it off. I told myself everyone was busy, stressed, dealing with their own lives. But the feeling followed me everywhere. One afternoon, I ran into someone we both knew well. We exchanged small talk until there was an uncomfortable pause. They looked at me carefully, like they were deciding whether to say something. "You okay?" they finally asked. I laughed. "Yeah, why wouldn't I be?" They hesitated. No reason, just never mind. That never mind stayed with me long after we parted ways. I did what anyone would do. I went to my best friend. If something felt off, they would know. They always did. I called them that evening, expecting reassurance, expecting them to laugh and tell me I was imagining things. Instead, the call rang longer than usual before they answered. "Hey," they said, voice a little too casual. I told them everything. The strange looks, the awkward silences, the feeling that something was happening behind my back. As I spoke, I waited for their familiar outrage on my behalf, their immediate loyalty. It didn't come. Instead, there was a pause, too long, heavy. "Well," they said slowly, "people talk. You know how it is." Something about that response felt wrong. "Talk about what?" I asked. "Nothing important," they replied quickly. "You shouldn't worry so much." But I was worried now. Over the next few days, the distance between us grew. Messages that once got instant replies now took hours. Calls were cut short. Plans were postponed. then forgotten. Every time I tried to bring it up, my best friend brushed it off, telling me I was being sensitive, that I was reading into things too much. I wanted to believe them. Then came the night I wasn't invited. A small gathering, nothing major. But everyone was there, everyone except me. I found out through social media, smiling faces and familiar places flashing across my screen like proof of something I couldn't explain away anymore. I stared at my phone, heart pounding, fingers trembling as I typed a message. "Hey, didn't know you all were meeting up tonight." The reply came quickly. "Oh, I thought you knew." I didn't. That night, I lay awake replaying every conversation, every moment I'd ignored. I realized something terrifying. My best friend knew exactly what was going on. Worse, they were choosing not to tell me. Trust doesn't shatter all at once. It fractures slowly, quietly, until one day you realize you're standing on broken ground. And deep down, I began to suspect that the person I trusted most might be the reason everything felt so wrong. I didn't plan to find out the truth the way I did. I wasn't looking for answers that day. I was just trying to breathe. The tension had become unbearable. Every message felt forced, every interaction strained. My best friend and I were orbiting each other, close enough to see the damage, too far apart to fix it. I kept telling myself that honesty would come when it was ready, that real friends don't let misunderstandings fester. I was wrong. The truth arrived accidentally, slipped into my life by someone who assumed I already knew. We were sitting across from each other, an acquaintance I'd known for years, not close but familiar enough. Conversation drifted until my name came up, followed by an awkward laugh. "I didn't think you'd show up," they said. "Why wouldn't I asked. Their smile faltered. "Oh, I thought you were keeping your distance after everything." My stomach dropped. After what? The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. They looked around, then back at me, eyes filled with hesitation and something else, regret. "You really don't know," they said quietly. I shook my head. That's when they told me. Not gently, not carefully, just facts spilling out in broken sentences. Stories, accusations, conversations I'd never been part of, decisions made without me, opinions formed about me behind closed doors. And at the center of it all was one familiar name. My best friend. They had spoken for me, about me. They had shared my private struggles, twisted my words, framed my actions in the worst possible light. They'd painted themselves as the loyal one, the concerned friend, while I became the problem no one wanted to deal with. I felt numb, like my body was there, but my soul had stepped away. "I thought you knew," the acquaintance repeated softly. "Everyone thought you knew." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My mind was racing through memories, suddenly seeing them through a different lens. Every hesitation, every vague answer, every time I was told I was overthinking, it all fit together now. I left without saying much, walking aimlessly until my feet hurt. I replayed years of friendship in my head, searching for the moment it all turned. Or maybe it had always been this way, and I just hadn't noticed. That night, I confronted my best friend. I didn't accuse, I didn't yell. I simply asked one question. "Why didn't you tell me?" The silence on the other end of the line was louder than any confession. When they finally spoke, their words were defensive, carefully chosen. "I was just trying to help. You were going through a lot. People were concerned." "Concerned," I repeated, or convinced. They sighed, frustrated. "You're blowing this out of proportion." That was the moment something inside me broke. Because betrayal doesn't always come with cruelty. Sometimes it comes wrapped in excuses, justified by intentions, softened by familiarity. And somehow, that hurts even more. I hung up knowing one thing for sure. The person I trusted with my truth had decided to rewrite my story without me. And there was no going back. I thought confrontation would bring relief. I thought once the truth was out in the open, things would make sense again. Instead, it left me hollow. The days that followed felt unreal, like I was moving through someone else's life. I kept reaching for my phone out of habit, forgetting that the person I used to talk to about everything was now the reason my chest felt so heavy. The silence between us was no longer accidental, it was chosen. And that hurt the most. I began to grieve, even though no one had died. That's the strange thing about losing someone to betrayal. The person is still alive, still breathing, still walking around with the same face and voice, but the version of them you loved is gone. I replayed memories obsessively, laughing until we cried. Promises made late at night. The way they used to say, "I've got you." Always. I wondered which moments were real and which were just convenient at the time. I wondered if I had been a placeholder, someone useful until I wasn't. Friends started reaching out. Some apologized for believing things without asking me first. Others stayed distant, unsure of where they stood now that the narrative had shifted. I didn't blame them. When a story is told with confidence, people rarely question it. Still, the isolation stung. What surprised me most was how my best friend acted afterward. Not remorseful, not apologetic, just distant, almost annoyed, as if my hurt was an inconvenience. When we did speak, it felt formal, guarded, like strangers pretending to be polite. "I didn't think it would affect you this much," they said once. That sentence echoed in my mind for days. I realized then that they had never truly understood me. Not my boundaries, not my vulnerabilities, not the weight of the trust I'd placed in them. Or maybe they had understood and chosen to ignore it. I started setting boundaries, something I'd never needed to do with them before. Conversations became shorter. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped trying to fix what they had broken. There was a quiet power in that, even though it hurt. Healing wasn't dramatic. It was slow and uncomfortable. Some nights I cried over the friendship more than the damage it caused. Other nights I felt angry, at them, at myself, at the years I couldn't get back. But in the stillness, I learned something important. Not everyone who walks beside you is walking with you. Some people stay close because they benefit from your openness, your loyalty, your silence. And when you stop serving a purpose, they rewrite the story to protect themselves. Letting go wasn't a single decision. It was a series of small choices, choosing not to reach out, choosing not to defend myself to people who had already decided who I was, choosing peace over closure. And somewhere in that process, I stopped missing the person they were and started accepting the person they had shown me. Losing my best friend forced me to sit with myself in ways I never had before. Without our constant conversations, without someone to lean on out of habit, there was a quiet I couldn't escape. At first, that quiet was terrifying. It reminded me of everything I'd lost. But over time, it became a space where I could finally hear my own thoughts. I stopped trying to explain my side of the story to everyone. I learned that people who truly cared would come to me, and those who didn't were never really listening in the first place. There was freedom in that realization. Exhausting yourself to be understood by the wrong people only deepens the wound. Slowly, my life began to feel like mine again. I paid attention to how I felt around people. I noticed who made me feel safe, who listened without judgment, who respected my silence as much as my words. For the first time, I understood that loyalty isn't loud. It's consistent. It shows up without needing to be asked. It protects even when it's inconvenient. I also faced uncomfortable truths about myself. I had ignored red flags because I was afraid of being alone. I had accepted less than I deserved because history felt more important than honesty. That awareness hurt, but it also empowered me. Growth rarely arrives gently. One day, unexpectedly, my former best friend reached out. A short message, casual, as if nothing had happened. "I hope you're doing well." I stared at the screen for a long time. In the past, I would have replied instantly, grateful for any sign of connection. This time, I asked myself a different question. Would responding bring me peace or reopen a wound? I chose peace. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of respect for the version of me that had survived the loss and learned from it. Closure doesn't always come from conversations. Sometimes it comes from acceptance. I realized then that I hadn't lost everything. I had lost someone who couldn't protect me, but I gained clarity, strength, and self-trust. I became more careful with my heart. Not closed, just wiser. Friendship, I learned, is not about how long someone has known you. It's about how they treat your truth. Anyone can share laughter with you. Very few can be trusted with your pain. I thought I knew my best friend until this happened. But what I discovered in the aftermath mattered more. I discovered who I was without betrayal defining me. I discovered that I could walk away from what hurt me and still keep my heart intact. And most importantly, I learned to be the kind of friend to myself that I had always been to others, loyal, honest, and brave enough to let go. And that changed everything.